Admiral Zethkar of the Galactic Defense Coalition stared at the tactical display with growing despair. 3 years. 3 long years of brutal warfare against the Void Swarm. And they were losing badly. What had started as border skirmishes had become a fight for the very survival of civilized space. The massive command center of Station Omega-7 buzzed with activity as officers from dozens of species worked desperately to coordinate their failing defense. Holographic displays showed red zones spreading across the galaxy like a disease. Each red dot represented a star system consumed by the swarm. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 7th Fleet," reported Commander Yiska, her blue-scaled hands trembling as she operated the communication console. "That's the 4th Fleet this week." Zethkar closed his 4 eyes and tried to push away the exhaustion that had become his constant companion. The Coalition had thrown everything they had at the Void Swarm. The proud warships of the Kethari Empire, with their energy shields that could deflect small moons. The bioships of the Helican Collective, grown rather than built, capable of healing their own wounds in battle. The massive dreadnoughts of the Stonefolk, built from asteroids and powered by captured stars. None of it had been enough. The Void Swarm defied every principle of warfare the galaxy had known. They didn't negotiate. They didn't retreat. They consumed everything in their path, converting matter into more of themselves. Planets, ships, entire civilizations, all became fuel for their endless hunger. "What's our current fleet strength?" Zethkar asked, though he dreaded the answer. 47 capital ships remaining operational across all fronts, came the reply from Lieutenant Commander Vex, a insectoid hivemind representative. "We estimate the swarm has over 3,000 bioships, and their numbers continue to grow with each system they take." The Admiral's chest plates rattled, his species equivalent of a sigh. When this war began, the Coalition had commanded over 800 capital ships and thousands of support vessels. Now they were down to a handful of survivors, scattered across the galaxy in a desperate holding action. A new alarm rang through the command center. The main display shifted to show an incoming transmission from the Outer Rim territories. The face that appeared was that of General Korvash, a veteran warrior whose people had been fighting the swarm longer than anyone. "Admiral," Korvash's gravelly voice carried across the void. Zethkar felt his blood chill. Humanity. The young species that had joined the galactic community barely 50 years ago. They had been offered Coalition membership when the war began, but had politely declined to participate. Their exact words had been, "We'll observe and provide humanitarian aid, but this isn't our fight." Many Coalition members had been angry at humanity's refusal. Here was a species with advanced technology and impressive ships, choosing to sit on the sidelines while civilization burned. But the humans had been true to their word about humanitarian aid. Their hospital ships had saved millions of refugees. Their supply convoys had kept Coalition forces fed and armed when their own logistics failed. Still, the Coalition had learned to manage without human military support. What could they possibly want now, when the war was almost over? "What do they say?" Zethkar asked. General Korvash's expression was puzzled. "They're requesting permission to join the war effort. Effective immediately. They say they've been preparing." The command center fell silent. After 3 years of observation, humanity wanted to fight? Now, when defeat seemed certain? "How many ships?" asked Commander Yiska. "They didn't specify numbers," Korvash replied. "They just said their fleet is ready and they want to know where we need them most." Zethkar considered this development. Humanity's technology was impressive. Their ships used some kind of exotic energy source that Coalition scientists didn't fully understand, but they were newcomers to galactic warfare. Their largest known vessels were exploration ships and cargo haulers. What could they possibly contribute at this stage? Still, desperate times called for desperate measures. "Tell them they can join the defense of the Kepler sector," Zethkar decided. "We've got 18 ships holding the line there against a swarm advance. If the humans want to help, that's where we need bodies." As Korvash's transmission ended, the Admiral turned back to the tactical display. The Kepler sector was a lost cause. Everyone knew it. The 18 ships there were buying time for civilian evacuations. Nothing more. If the humans wanted their first taste of real combat, they'd get it there. What Zethkar didn't know was that humanity had spent 3 years doing much more than just observing. Deep in the Sol system, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UHSS Determination, flagship of the Unified Human Defense Fleet. Around her, the largest military assembly in human history prepared for departure. The fleet stretched across local space like a metal constellation. Not dozens of ships, but thousands. "Status report," Admiral Chen commanded. "All vessels report ready, Admiral," replied her XO, Commander Jackson Park. "Quantum drive systems are charged and synchronized. All AI cores are online and integrated with the tactical network. Munitions are loaded and ready." Chen nodded, studying the tactical display that showed not just her fleet, but feeds from across Coalition space. For 3 years, humanity had been watching this war with growing concern, not because they feared the swarm would reach Earth. Their analysis suggested that was unlikely, but because they recognized something the Coalition had missed. The Void Swarm wasn't just another hostile species. They were what remained of a galactic civilization that had tried to transcend biology entirely, and had gone horribly wrong. The biomechanical horrors spreading across space were the descendants of beings who had once been much like the current Coalition species. Humanity had learned this by doing what they did best: studying, analyzing, and preparing. While the Coalition fought desperately to hold the line, human scientists had been dissecting captured swarm biomass. Human engineers had been developing new weapons and defense systems. Human strategists had been wargaming scenarios and developing tactics. And most importantly, human philosophers and ethicists had been asking a question that no one else had thought to ask. What if the swarm could be cured rather than destroyed? But that was a long-term goal. First, they had to survive long enough to try. "Signal all vessels," Admiral Chen ordered. "Begin quantum transit to the Kepler sector. Operation Homecoming is a go." Across human space, reality folded as thousands of ships vanished into quantum tunnels, racing toward a war zone where 18 brave Coalition vessels were making their final stand against impossible odds. The Void Swarm was about to learn why humanity had earned their place among the stars, not through conquest, but through something far more dangerous: absolute determination, combined with the patience to strike only when victory was assured. In the Kepler sector, Coalition Captain Thexva received a priority message on her battle-damaged cruiser. "Human reinforcements inbound. ETA 4 hours. Maintain position." She shared a look with her bridge crew. 4 hours was an eternity in combat like this. But maybe, just maybe, they could hold that long. What Captain Thexva couldn't have imagined was that when those 4 hours were up, the entire nature of the war was about to change forever. Captain Thexva had seen many impossible things in her 30 years of service, but nothing had prepared her for what emerged from the quantum tunnels above Kepler Prime. The first human ship to arrive was massive beyond anything in the Coalition database. The vessel stretched nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a seamless blend of metal and energy that seemed to shift and flow like liquid starlight. But it wasn't alone. Behind it came another. Then 10 more. Then 100. "By the ancestors," whispered her tactical officer, all 6 of his eyes wide with shock. "How many ships are there?" Thexva watched her sensors struggle to count the arriving vessels. The numbers kept climbing. 300. 500. 800. The display finally stopped at 1,247 ships of various sizes, from massive dreadnoughts down to sleek fighters that moved like living things through space. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet," came a calm voice over the communication channel. "Coalition vessels, please transmit your tactical data. We're here to help." Before Thexva could respond, her sensors screamed a warning. The Void Swarm advance force that had been slowly pushing toward their position suddenly accelerated. Hundreds of twisted bioships erupted from the outer system's asteroid field, their chitinous hulls gleaming with malevolent energy. The swarm had been patient, slowly wearing down the Coalition defenders over the past week. But the arrival of human reinforcements had triggered their attack programming. They would not allow this force to establish position. All coalition ships, fall back to formation Gamma, HFY ordered, following standard defensive protocols. They would group together, concentrate their firepower, and try to make the swarm pay for every meter of space. But the human ships did something unexpected. Instead of falling back, they advanced. Admiral Chen, HFY broadcast urgently, "You need to pull back. That's a full swarm battle group, over 300 bioships. Your formation will be overwhelmed." "Understood, Captain," came the reply. Watch and learn. The human fleet spread into a formation unlike anything HFY had seen. Instead of the standard defensive clusters favored by coalition forces, they formed a complex three-dimensional pattern that seemed to pulse and shift like a living organism. Individual ships moved with impossible precision, their courses coordinated by some kind of shared intelligence. The swarm ships opened fire first, launching waves of bioplasma that had melted through the armor of countless coalition vessels. The burning green energy raced across space toward the human fleet. That's when HFY witnessed the first miracle. The human ships didn't dodge the incoming fire or raise energy shields. Instead, their hulls began to glow with a soft blue light. The bioplasma struck the ships and simply stopped. Not reflected, not absorbed, just neutralized, as if the energy itself had been convinced to cease existing. "What kind of defensive system is that?" demanded her science officer. Before anyone could speculate, the human fleet began its counterattack. Every human ship fired simultaneously. But instead of the familiar energy beams or projectile weapons used by coalition forces, they launched something that looked like streams of liquid light. These beams reached across space at near light speed and struck the swarm bioships with surgical precision. The effect was immediate and horrifying, at least from the swarm's perspective. Wherever the human weapons touched swarm vessels, the biomechanical horror began to change. The twisted organic metal started to straighten. The sickly green glow faded to normal colors. And most impossibly of all, the swarm ships stopped attacking. "Captain," her communications officer said in a voice filled with wonder, "I'm receiving signals from those swarm ships. They're trying to surrender." HFY stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In 3 years of warfare, no one had ever seen a swarm vessel surrender. They fought until destroyed. Always. It was one of the most terrifying things about them. But now, dozens of bioships were broadcasting coalition standard surrender codes. "This is Admiral Chen to all swarm vessels," came the human commander's voice on an open channel. "You have been freed from the viral programming that has controlled your species for millennia. We offer you medical assistance and the chance to rejoin galactic civilization as the Helix people you once were." The Helix people. HFY's blood ran cold as she remembered that name from ancient history texts, an advanced civilization that had vanished from the galactic core over 3,000 years ago. They had been exploring ways to merge biological and mechanical systems when they suddenly disappeared. Now she understood. The Void Swarm weren't invaders. They were victims. An entire species trapped by their own failed experiment, forced to consume and convert everything they encountered by programming they could no longer control. And somehow, the humans had found a way to free them. More human ships were arriving through the quantum tunnels. Larger vessels that HFY's sensors identified as hospital ships and engineering platforms. They moved toward the surrendered swarm vessels with obvious, peaceful intent. "How?" she whispered. "How did you do this?" Admiral Chen's voice came through clearly, as if she had heard the question. "Captain HFY, we spent 3 years studying the enemy, instead of just fighting them. We learned that the Void Swarm biomass contains traces of the original Helix neural patterns, trapped beneath layers of viral programming. Our weapons don't destroy, they cure." On the tactical display, more swarm ships were arriving from deeper in the system. But these new arrivals immediately came under fire from the freed Helix vessels. The cured ships fought with desperate fury against their former fleetmates, using their intimate knowledge of swarm tactics to devastating effect. "The cured ships are transmitting the neutralizing frequency," Admiral Chen explained. "Every swarm vessel we free becomes an ally in liberating others. It's exponential conversion." Thexva watched in amazement as the tide of battle shifted with impossible speed. What had begun as humanity's first combat engagement was becoming something else entirely. A liberation campaign that was freeing an enslaved species. But the swarm's higher intelligence networks were adapting. Deep in the outer system, massive hive ships began to emerge from the gas giant's shadow. These were the swarm's command vessels, each one the size of a small moon and carrying millions of bioships. "Admiral," Thexva warned, "you've got bigger problems incoming. Those are planetary assault ships. Each one can crack a world's crust." "We see them," came the calm reply. "All human vessels. Advance to Formation Delta. Prepare planetary liberation protocols." The human fleet began to move toward the massive hive ships with the same impossible coordination. But Thexva noticed something that made her scales tingle with anticipation. More quantum tunnels were opening. Many more. The 1,247 ships she had initially counted had been just the advance force. The full human defense fleet was arriving, and it was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. As thousands of human vessels poured into the system, Admiral Chen sent one final message to the coalition forces. "Captain Thexva, please relay to Admiral Zethkar that the Kepler sector is secure. We estimate full system liberation within the next 3 hours. And tell him that we're just getting started." In the command center of Station Omega-7, Admiral Zethkar stared at the incoming reports with growing disbelief. The humans weren't just fighting the swarm, they were converting them back into allies. And their fleet was still growing. For the first time in 3 years, he dared to hope that the war might actually be winnable. 4 hours and 37 minutes after humanity entered the war, Admiral Zethkar received the most impossible status report in galactic military history. "Sir," Commander Yiska announced, her voice trembling with disbelief, "the Kepler sector is completely clear. All swarm forces have been either neutralized or converted. The humans are requesting permission to advance to the next contested system." The massive command center had fallen silent as word of humanity's impossible victory spread through the coalition forces. Officers from dozens of species stared at the tactical displays showing impossible things. Swarm bioships flying in formation with human vessels. Broadcasting coalition identification codes. "How many casualties did the humans take?" Zethkar asked, still struggling to process what he was seeing. "That's the remarkable part." "Sir," replied Lieutenant Commander Vex, his compound eyes reflecting the glow of the holographic displays. "0 combat losses. They lost 3 ships to technical malfunctions during transit, but not a single vessel was destroyed in combat." Admiral Zethkar's chest plates began to rattle again, but this time not from despair. For 3 years, the coalition had been throwing ships and lives at an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Now these newcomers had achieved in hours what the galaxy's best militaries had failed to accomplish in years. "Open a channel to Admiral Chen," he ordered. The main display shifted to show the bridge of the human flagship. Admiral Chen stood calmly before her command console, looking as if she had just completed a routine training exercise rather than revolutionizing galactic warfare. "Admiral Zethkar," she said with a slight nod, "I understand you have questions." "How?" was all the coalition commander could manage to say. Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that reminded Zethkar why humanity had managed to reach the stars despite being one of the youngest species in the galaxy. "We did what humans do best," she said. "We studied the problem until we understood it completely. Then we solved it permanently." "But your fleet," Zethkar protested. "Where did all those ships come from?" "Our intelligence suggested humanity had fewer than 50 military vessels. You were counting our exploration and patrol ships," Chen replied. "What you didn't know is that for the past 3 years, every human colony, every orbital platform, every asteroid mining station has been building warships. We converted our entire industrial base to military production the day we realized what the Void Swarm really was." She gestured to something off-screen, and the display shifted to show humanity's true fleet strength. Zethkar's 4 eyes widened as the numbers scrolled past, not hundreds of ships, but hundreds of thousands. The humans hadn't just been preparing to join the war, they had been preparing to end it. We learned something important during our analysis. Chen continued. The Void Swarm isn't evil. They're sick. The original Helix civilization attempted to upload their consciousness into biomechanical bodies to achieve immortality, but the transfer process was corrupted by a quantum virus that overwrote their personalities with simple consumption imperatives. A virus? Commander Yiska asked from behind Zethkar. Think of it as a cosmic computer virus that infects consciousness itself, Chen explained. For 3,000 years, the Helix have been trapped inside their own bodies, unable to stop themselves from consuming everything they encounter. Our weapons don't kill them, they cure them. Admiral Zethkar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton as the implications became clear. You're saying that every swarm ship contains innocent beings who are being forced to commit these atrocities? Exactly. And now that we've proven our cure works, we can begin the real mission. Chen's expression grew serious. Admiral, we request permission to advance to the galactic core. Our intelligence suggests that's where the original infection began, and where the swarm's primary hive mind is located. The core? Zethkar was stunned. The galactic core was where this war had begun 3 years ago. It was also where the largest concentration of swarm forces was located. Millions of bioships surrounding the ancient Helix homeworld. No coalition force had been able to get within 50 light-years of it. You want to attack their strongest position? We want to cure their leaders, Chen corrected. Our analysis suggests that if we can reach the central hive and neutralize the quantum virus at its source, every swarm ship in the galaxy will be instantly freed. The war won't just end, it will be completely reversed. Before Zethkar could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the command center. New contacts were appearing on long-range sensors. Massive formations of swarm ships approaching from multiple vectors. The enemy's hive mind had finally realized what was happening and was sending everything it had toward human positions. Admiral Chen, Zethkar warned. You've got approximately 50,000 swarm vessels converging on your position. You need to withdraw immediately. But the human admiral was already turning to her crew, issuing rapid orders. All ships, advance to maximum quantum speed. We're going through them. Not around them. Through them? Zethkar was aghast. Admiral, that's military suicide. No, Chen replied with absolute confidence. That's how you cure a galaxy. What happened next would be remembered as the most spectacular 5 hours in galactic military history. The human fleet didn't retreat or maneuver defensively. Instead, they formed a massive spearhead formation and accelerated directly toward the approaching swarm armada. As the two forces met, space itself seemed to light up with the blue glow of humanity's curing weapons. But this time, the scale was beyond anything seen before. Entire squadrons of swarm ships were converted simultaneously, their cured crews immediately joining the human advance. The effect cascaded through the swarm formation like a wave, with each liberated ship adding its firepower to the cure weapon barrage. Admiral Zethkar watched in amazement as his tactical display showed the impossible. The swarm fleet was converting itself. Ships that had been attacking human vessels moments before were suddenly broadcasting surrender codes and requesting medical assistance. Sir, reported Commander Yiska, we're receiving communications from over 30,000 former swarm vessels. They're identifying themselves as liberated Helix civilians and requesting permission to join the coalition fleet. The battle that should have been humanity's destruction had become the largest liberation operation in recorded history. And the humans were still advancing toward the galactic core, gathering converted allies with every light year they traveled. Admiral Chen, Zethkar called out. What's your status? Right on schedule, came the reply. We're encountering heavier resistance as we approach the core, but the exponential conversion effect is accelerating. Every ship we cure gives us more firepower for the next engagement. Hours passed in a blur of impossible victories. Human forces, now augmented by hundreds of thousands of liberated Helix ships, punched through defensive lines that had stood for millennia. The swarm's hive mind was adapting, creating new viral variants to try to resist the cure. But human technology was adapting faster. Finally, Admiral Zethkar received the transmission he had never dared hope to hear. Coalition Command. This is Admiral Chen. We have reached the galactic core. The central hive is in visual range. Beginning final cure sequence in 30 seconds. Across Coalition space, every sensor array turned toward the galactic core. What they detected in the next 30 seconds changed everything. A pulse of pure blue energy erupted from the core and raced outward at faster-than-light speed. Wherever it touched swarm ships, the same miraculous transformation occurred. Bioships throughout the galaxy suddenly stopped their attacks and began broadcasting peaceful intentions. The quantum virus that had enslaved the Helix civilization for 3 millennia was finally dead. In the aftermath, as freed Helix ships began broadcasting messages of gratitude and requests for humanitarian aid, Admiral Zethkar asked the question that every coalition member was thinking. Admiral Chen, how long had humanity been planning this operation? The human commander's reply was simple and terrifying. Since the day we received your first distress call 3 years ago. We've been preparing to end this war since before we officially joined it. Right. As reports flooded in from across the galaxy, swarm ships peacefully surrendering, converted Helix civilians requesting assistance, entire systems suddenly free from the terror that had consumed them. One fact became crystal clear. Humanity hadn't just entered the war and won it in 5 hours. They had entered the war and cured it. In doing so, they had not only saved galactic civilization, but had also reunited it with a lost people whose advanced technology and grateful cooperation would benefit everyone for generations to come. The Void Swarm was gone forever. In its place stood the restored Helix Confederation, eager to rejoin the galactic community they had been forced to attack. And humanity had earned something that few species ever achieved: the absolute trust and gratitude of an entire galaxy. When the final tally was complete, the war that had raged for 3 years had been ended in exactly 4 hours and 57 minutes of human intervention. It would go down in history as humanity's definitive proof that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the ability to destroy your enemies, but the wisdom to heal them instead.